Hello, welcome to another MEF webinar sponsored by Vox Solutions. My name is Ross Flynn. I'm your moderator today. I work with the programs alongside a fellow called James Williams, who you may know. And today, as I said, we have a webinar kindly sponsored by Vox Solutions. This is actually kind of a follow-up webinar to a webinar we did a few months ago with Teodor and Ehsan, I believe. And it's all about artificial inflation. And this is a problem that we discussed a few months ago. They started seeing some kind of disturbing trends when it comes to different types of frauds. And as you can guess by this webinar taking place, the problems are not getting any better. So feel free to ask any questions. We want to make this a very interactive session. It's actually one of our most well-attended and most registered webinars ever. So we want to make it as interactive as possible. And I think that's just an indication that there is a lot of concern out there for this topic. Specifically, I don't want to spoil too much of what the Vox guys are going to talk about, but specifically, artificial inflation coupled with SMS trashing can cause some really, really big problems and can become more than the sum of their parts, basically. But I'll let these lads get into that. First, I'd like to introduce Ehsan Ahmadi, who is the founder and CEO of Vox Solutions. Then we have Teodor Magureanu, who is the chief of staff of Vox Solutions also. And then Iulian Botirlaianu. Sorry, I knew I was going to butcher your name. Global VP of Strategic Partnerships for Vox Solutions. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Ross. Thank you for the intro. Well,
no problem. So I think, Teodor, you're going to take us off.
Great to be here.
You have the slides there ready. We can see them. So do you want to get started?
Absolutely. Sure thing. Thanks for the intro, Ross. As Ross said, I'm Chief of Staff at Vox, for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet before. And I'm here with my colleagues, but also lovely clients in order to discuss what are some, I'd say, disturbing trends that we see in the industry, and what are the points that we believe recently MNOs, OTTs, and players at large in the ecosystem should be aware of. To talk specifically on the structure of how we're replying this conversation, I'll go off and discussing first what are these disturbing trends that we're seeing. Ross has mentioned part of them. I'll go a bit into more detail, as well as the scale at which this is happening. Iulian will follow up and address specifically what can be done right in order to mitigate such fraud types, and then we'll also share an interesting story with you with how we've managed to actually mitigate this problem in the past through our technology. Now, going on, we all know that SMS is a dynamic space, right? And when things are going well and the SMS technology is used globally and by many enterprises, right, as a form of 2FA specifically, it's also normal that fraud is dynamic in that sense, right? So there's a saying, where fraud goes, where the money flows, and that's no case that's different for SMS. And while there are traditional fraud types that we've been accustomed to, we are seeing one troubling trend, fraud implementations, that is very important to pay attention to, because otherwise it can have specific high issues. Now, what is that trend specifically? As Ross mentioned, here we're talking about artificial inflation of traffic, or unsolicited traffic alongside spam, but also how that is used in collaboration with other fraud mechanisms out there in the market to make it even so more dangerous. Let's take a step back, and while I'm sure some of you know, I'll ask what is artificial inflation of traffic specifically. Now, artificial inflation of traffic basically happens when any player in the chain generates artificial traffic requests, let's say for an OTP message to be sent, right, from any of the large OTTs, without that request being legitimate. So having a physical user that actually wants to finish the sign-up process. It's a form of unsolicited traffic, right, in that sense, because no real user has made that request. In a sense, it is similar by its mechanism of spam. Both of them haven't been requested by the user. Both of them get delivered to the user. And this is damaging towards the user experience. I'll deep dive a bit more into that later, but now I switch to trashing. SMS trashing is another completely different mechanism in a way, and it's not novel. It's been here around for some time. It's highly profitable for fraudsters and a big issue towards both OTTs and also to mobile operators. And it happens when portion of the traffic that is intended to be sent from the OTTs towards the MNOs is stopped somewhere in the chain, and it's trashed, basically, as the name suggests, right? Without that traffic actually reaching users. Both of them separately pose a problem to our industry, and both basically they occur with players that, well, choose not to be responsible, or fraudsters that engage on either one or increasingly in both of them. And this is basically the novelty that we want to talk about. While neither of them are new, the combination of them is a phenomenon that we see increasingly throughout our clients and that we help solve in the industry, because otherwise it can be highly damaging, as Ross has said. How does that work specifically? Before explaining what the deadly combination between them is, I would first take a step back and explain how each of them work. And I'll ask people to stick around with me because this is highly interesting. With artificial traffic, right, as we've mentioned, there is a fraudster that is included generally within the routing that chooses to create artificial requests for SMS and hence the OTT without knowing if that request is a legitimate request or an artificial request, sends it alongside legitimate traffic, correct? The fraudster then plans to intercept that traffic being included within the routing of the said OTT, right? And convert it basically without having that SMS needed to be actually terminated with MNOs, right? It hasn't been requested by a normal user, so no one expects it to be actually be terminated within the MNOs network, right? And this is how it works. On trashing, the mechanism is completely different. Trashing occurs when an OTT sends a specific OTP or 2FA or even promotional message towards the users of a certain network. However, a player included within routing chooses to delete a portion of the legitimate traffic. In that sense, the OTT, let's say, has paid to deliver 100 texts, right? But 40 of them end up on the way, and they're charged the revenue, and the OTT has to pay for it. However, the MNO gets nothing, right? It doesn't even know the legitimate, those legitimate texts should have intended to reach its network. What is the problem with those phenomena that, even though they may seem isolated in nature, can be used together? Now, what we've seen is a troubling trend. And basically, the problem is that players now are increasingly utilizing SMS trashing in order to make sure that they can go for artificial inflation of traffic. How does that happen? You normally would suggest, right, that artificial inflation of traffic or SMS trashing, they would go noticed by OTTs, right? In the end, it's either a matter of artificial requests for which the OTTs pay more, or a problem of SMS trashing, where their conversion rate should be low, right? However, the two in combination pose the mechanisms that OTT cannot measure properly. How does that happen? I'll take a practical example. Let's say that Google has to, or any OTT must send a number of 100 messages towards a network, right? These are legitimate average number of users sent day by day. An aggregator that gets, or a fraudster that gets in the chain would generate 100 additional requests on top, right? If you only had the legitimate requests and the fraudster would trash 40, basically only 60 would get delivered, right? So the conversion rate is too low, the OTT would know, and basically the player would get kicked out of routing. But here, this is where artificial inflation of traffic comes in. Because there are 100 additional artificial requests, that player gets them, stops them, and converts them without them having to be converted or terminated in the network, right? So as a surprise, you have 60 legitimate messages that got delivered and 100 artificial ones that got converted. So now there are 160 messages converted out of 200. It's at 80% conversion. It can be 90%. It is good enough to fly with the OTTs. As such, that player remains in routing, and in the middle makes enormous amounts of money in the process, right? This is a very profitable and highly damaging problem to our industry. And people and players are using it increasingly unresponsible and at large scales. And that poses a problem to the ecosystem at large. Why is that a problem? First, it's a problem in terms of scale because OTTs are not capable of measuring it properly. And this has been validated in partnerships with OTTs. And we're uncovering levels of such mechanisms that have not been expected at start. And the other problem is that operators do not know exactly what the legitimate number of the legitimate volumes they should get, and don't know exactly how big the problem of SMS trashing is. Why is it an issue for all players within the ecosystem? First, OTTs end up paying additionally, and as we've seen in the recent Twitter scandal, right? On volumes of artificial traffic that have basically no value for them, right? It doesn't really help with new user signups. And also SMS are getting crashed, which means there is lower conversion on legitimate traffic. So the OTTs, first of all, are one stakeholder to be damaged. Now, on the other end, MNOs don't get the legitimate traffic that was intended to be sent over to them and terminated by the OTTs, meaning that MNO profits and revenue is lower than intended, right? Than the market mechanisms would suggest. But what people fail to understand, it's a problem to aggregators as well, because it can be used by one player to kick out another from routing. So let's say that one player is included in the routing of these OTTs, and another would generate artificial traffic. Now, generally what happens is this traffic can only be converted by the player that has generated it. So if any player chooses to do so, and this is one of the topics of today, right? The fact that there are armies of bots, as the title suggests, and players are capable of producing such artificial requests in the millions. Yeah, this is not, it's not a trend that is small, it's a trend of a larger magnitude. It's done with, as far as we know, not a significant effort, and it's highly profitable for the players that are involved. But it's damaging all the other players in the ecosystem, and it's not sustainable. If one player chooses to generate such traffic, another player cannot convert it. So naturally, the other player is kicked out of routing. So it's bad for everyone in the business. Not to say that as this happens, enterprises can lose faith in conversion, or users have a damaged experience with the MNO SMS services, and it can lead to a technology switch in the future, right? So on all sides, it's something to be tackled, mitigated, and treated as a serious problem, as it can have serious consequences, and it can only be treated properly with technology. Now, we've discussed about what exactly it is and how it happens. I'm sure everyone is asking, what is the magnitude of such problems, right? Because 1% is very different than 30% of traffic. And if we move on the next slide, I'll talk about a bit how we're seeing this problem in terms of scale. On the left side of the slide, you'll see benchmarks on SMS trashing. On the right hand of the slide, you'll see benchmarks on artificial SMS generation. Combined, they're even deadlier than the individual figures are, right? Because it's an exponential effect. If we're talking about SMS trashing, we validated fraud projects and fraud relationship with different OTTs that up to 40% of legitimate OTT traffic intended from the OTTs to reach the end users of certain networks is effectively trashed. That's almost half. Right.
Teodor, actually, sorry to interrupt, but that ties in with a question that we just got. What is your current volume estimate of artificial traffic on a global scale?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm glad to talk about it. It's it's one of the more troubling trends and increasing trends, right? So it's increased highly, and that's even a study from MEF that suggests it's one of the problems that grow highest, right, within past years. The volume really differs. But we've seen in some markets being around 25% or even half of the traffic that is generated on top has artificial traffic. but I'm glad for any other colleagues to share any interesting data points.
The way that you can measure it, if you let me, so we can measure it, or anybody can measure it, is in two ways. Part of this traffic, these fraudsters, they cannot capture, okay, and it's fall over to the rest of the network and reach to the MNO subscribers, and then we have complaints that they receive unsolicited messages, or we see them. So from our perspective as an anti-fraud company, dealing with the anti-fraud, we can see part of this traffic that they cannot capture and convert because they don't have 100% of they cannot control 100%. And since we know that usually different OTTs or brand, they have a distribution of like, I don't know, the 30% to 80% sending to an aggregator, we can estimate how much it could be. And in some cases, as Teodor mentioned, our estimation are in the area of half, okay, up to 50% of the traffic that OTTs see is artificial, or in some cases even more. Like if you look at how much Twitter claimed that they have artificial, and look at the total traffic that Twitter has out of the North America, then you can imagine that if that claim is correct, then more than half of the traffic of Twitter used to be artificial, okay? And then there is another way to measure it. We can work with, and we work with some OTTs and enterprises, asking them, guys, how much you see traffic now before working with us, okay? Before sending the traffic to us directly, to the MNOs that we represent. And they used to see, in some cases, same, up to 50%, more than when they started to send directly the traffic to the MNOs that we are representing, or we work with them, the traffic declined to 30%, excuse me, with 30% or 40%. So looking at different sources, I believe we think it's up to 50% so far, but since as it's very profitable, maybe at some point reach even 60-70% of the traffic. So nobody can stop it. Huh? If it's very profitable and nobody stop it, they can generate more and more, right?
Correct.
But so far, what we've seen, it's 20 to 50%.
Yeah,
Great.
And I'm sure we haven't seen the worst, right? We haven't seen the best of it, but we haven't seen the worst of it. That's why Ehsan's claim is correct. But also, it really matters on the market specifics, right? It's hard to come up with a general estimate or, you know, up the top benchmark of it. It varies by industry, by region, but also varies by the rate, right? Because it obviously is more rewarding to do it in markets in which the SMS rate for termination is higher than in other ones. And fraudsters are like any other business. They look at, it may seem fraud, but they look at profitability of their operations as such, and you know, they do it where they make most money. So it ranges to 50% or higher in networks in which the rates are high, generally.
So
normally,
sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, Ross. Normally, it doesn't make sense when the rate is below 2 cents, because it doesn't make sense the cost associated, or is not enough profitable, what we see. But wherever the rate is over 2 cents, there is artificial traffic, what we see. Okay, so meaning that that's the level or threshold of profitability. Below 2 cents, not much. But over 2 cents is profitable, you know. So they try all sorts of networks and all sorts of traffic, because it's depend also if they are in the routing, they can catch the traffic, they cannot. So if for that expensive one they cannot catch the traffic, they go for the cheaper one. It doesn't mean that, but they usually start and they push more on the one that is more profitable, meaning that the rate is higher, the termination rate is higher. but doesn't mean that at 5 cents or 4 cents, there is no artificial traffic. There is as well. Because if they have access to that traffic or that network, for that traffic to that network, they're going to generate for that network, in collaboration with the aggregators. Definitely aggregators are part of the game. So maybe they don't generate by themselves, but they work with fraudsters. And they know that they are fraudsters. So that's the pity part, that everyone knows. If you buy something very cheap, very, very cheap, below the market, you know that it is something dodgy going on right there. And if you see huge volume of the traffic, you also can realize. So it's not like, I do not suspect anybody that is, everyone in the market is knowing the market very well. So unfortunately, that is the it's a shame that unfortunately many aggregators are aware, but they don't do much about it.
Okay.
It really turns into a quality problem, right? We've seen other technologies fade, and SMS is ubiquitous and is of great value to enterprises. So that's why it has to be used sustainably and responsibly within the chain. But effectively, what Ehsan says, and it's important to note, is it's not rewarding below 2 cents. But if you look at Europe, 70% or 75% of operators have rates higher than that. So what we're trying to say is the majority of marketers is subject to having artificial traffic within their network. So it's a problem that is high in terms of impact, but it's also big in terms of reach, right? It's not only 10% of players that are in scope for artificial inflation of traffic from fraudsters, but rather the market at large. I think that probably answers the question about.
Yeah, and I was going to say, during
that
very well-spoken answer, we got about 12 other questions. So we're going to have to try and pace ourselves. Do you want to try one or two more before we keep going, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So Andrew Morrow asked, if bots generate large numbers of messages and the OTT chooses where to route them, how do the fraudsters ensure that the messages don't go via legitimate routes that they can't manipulate?
Okay.
I can take.
You want me to take it?
No, I can go for it.
Okay.
So generally, one of two answers happens, right? So there is one scenario where the fraudster that also generated the artificial requests is part of the routing or is working with a player included in routing. And this way they can stop then routing the artificial requests, right? Knowing which ones are exactly, they can be stopped before it reaches the MNO network. Now, this is the first scenario. The second scenario is where the fraudulent player is not part of the routing or has been included by routing. And this is actually this is how people really realize, right, that artificial traffic exists. Because what happens then? Let's say that artificial requests are generated and they're not stopped because the player is not included in routing. It means that these requests, you reach the SMS firewall of the MNO, or in case it passes, they reach users. So it turns into unsolicited traffic, and it turns into cases of having people just receive random OTPs that they have not requested on their phones. And this is actually why we believed it to be a very problem at first, without even knowing the scale of it and discovering it, right? Because there was one client of ours that actually had users before we started implementing our technology. And it was a very interesting case. So someone received the Binance one-time password, right? And that's financial, it has a financial play, right? So obviously he would raise a complaint of the MNO. We've also had someone making a complaint that he received the one-time password code for Tinder, and his wife saw that he received the one-time password code for Tinder. So that's a matter of trust, and let's not go into detail of that, right? But this is generally what happens when artificial traffic is not stopped by the fraudsters and routing. And this is why it's highly damaging, not only to industry profits, but also to consumer trust at large.
Teodor, I like to add something to Andrew's question. Andrew, mechanism is that way. So beside all the what mentioned Teodor, you are an aggregator in the routing for an OTT, large OTT, right? We know that OTTs routes, their LCR is based on price and conversion rate or delivery rate, depends. Especially the one that in the conversion rate are here the subject. If you have 10% traffic to a network, right? You are an aggregator, you have 10% of the traffic, and you are in the collaboration with the fraudsters, or you are yourself is fraud. You are also fraudsters. I mean, you generate by yourself. So you start to generate 10,000 messages. 10% you receive, 90% going to others, right? This is what we see when we start to see complaints and binaries and problems from the customers of MNO subscribers. What's happening in time? You know very well the dynamic of the routing is the dynamic in the big large OTTs. So you end in the beginning you receive only 10% of the traffic, but because you are the only one that converts that traffic, you starting to get more and more bigger and bigger portion of the traffic of the OTT, because their routing system considering that you have a better quality, okay, and especially if you have also a better rate, because normally these guys doing a lot of profit, they can also subsidize the price and give also a better rate to the OTTs. So OTTs see that, oh, you have a very good rate and also much better conversion than others. What's happening in 24 hours, 48 hours, you will become first in the routing, and most probably you collect 80% of the traffic, 70% of the traffic. So, you know, depends on the OTT. So in the beginning, yes, they don't have any control, but they know how the routings of OTTs works. So they keep generating the traffic, converting the one that reach to them, and the rest that doesn't reach to them, it stay unconverted, and impacting the stats of other aggregators in competition in the routing. And in 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, this is the nightmare that we have on the MNO side. We see a lot of artificial traffic coming because some aggregators in the market competing with each other. And unfortunately, it's not only one aggregator doing that. So one aggregator generating traffic with some fraudsters collecting good traffic, getting in the routing, and then they see that, oh, they lost the traffic because someone else have a better conversion. They realize that they generate more than them artificial traffic. They also start to generate more, and we end up to have some huge volumes of artificial traffic falling on to the MNO networks. You know, so this is what's happening.
Okay, great. Do you want to go for another one, or should we go back to the presentation?
I would suggest to go through and finalize the content. Some of them might be grouped, and also many might arise, and
sure.
just have sufficient time to
exactly. Yeah. So go ahead. I think we can go through this fairly quickly, and we have plenty of questions from people. So yeah, perfect.
Absolutely. So just to sum up. To this point, we've discussed what exactly it is, how it happens, what problems does it cause, and how big these problems are. Up to this point, we've concluded that it's a problem at large and that it can be highly damaging. But, well, we also have to ask ourselves what can be done right in order to address it. So moving on, I'd like to ask Iulian, our colleagues and VP of Strategic Partnership, to hop in and to discuss what actions can be taken to limit such behavior.
Thank you, Teodor. Okay, so Vox solutions solve the SMS trashing to its conversion detection module and the constant cooperation between MNOs, the technology partners, and the OTTs. Looking at the trashing mechanism here, you will see let's say the origination of the SMS and how this is reaching to the mobile subscribers. The fraudsters resulting to trashing, they are lowering the rate, as you see here. They can be either the one that they're working directly with the enterprises, or there can be the ones on the left promoting the slower rates to the ones that are directly connected. In the end, the OTT will face, let's say, a selection between some cheaper routes, which they definitely trash part of the traffic, and you have the official route with a market rate with a higher pricing offer. So what's the approach for mitigating such problem with the trashing? Well, the first step, of course, this sits with the OTT procurement to try to avoid this kind of cheap routes. The full mitigation of the trashing, it's a close collaboration between the MNOs, the global OTTs, and the technology player. By constantly analyzing the conversion of the OTTs along the chain, via the Vox 360 solution, Vox can help the OTTs and MNOs identify the trashing. Further, Vox verifies the conversion rates, which we see with the OTTs, with the MNOs, with whom, of course, we collaborate across different markets. And we're able to identify the bad actors in real time, helping them basically to eliminate them along the aggregation chain of the traffic. Let's go forward to the next slide, please. So regarding the Vox 360, we enable end-to-end visibility using our award-winning machine learning algorithm, using to detect both artificial inflation, the artificial traffic, and as well the SMS trashing. So the solution has proprietary technology. So we have proprietary AI engine and AI algorithms. And also machine learning algorithms. We have a proprietary database and a data mining engine, and also proprietary artificial traffic filtering, which is unique in the market, and we are able to eliminate up to 95% of the unsolicited traffic. This, of course, the technology solution impacts with the following. So we're able to notify the OTTs in real time of the fraudulent action with constant analysis of the artificial traffic and the detection of it. This way, we are also able to filter the traffic, the unsolicited part, the spam part. With this, we are able to protect the mobile subscribers of receiving all sorts of traffic that can also, we have cases from customers where they received different, let's say, or sensitive brands of traffic like Tinder. There's a very known case in which married couple actually received multiple Tinder messages. So this created, of course, some frictions within the couple, or Binance, people getting, let's say, scared that somebody might steal their possessions. So further on, the full mitigation, we believe it can be achieved having the right technology and the right cooperation between the technology player, the OTT, and of course the MNO as well.
Thank you, Iulian, for sharing that. I suggest we move on to the last section and take on the Q&A at the end. Moving on, we're happy to basically discuss on how we've utilized this technology. Obviously, we do it with multiple clients, but Ahmed from Jawwal has actually been kind enough to come and basically discuss to the market what is happening and raising awareness and basically helping everyone understand how big of an issue it is, what implications it can have, but also how it can be solved. So I do welcome him. And
He's
I
not
will
in the call right now. I don't think he's still not here, but we can just do some questions. I think he's running a bit late because of
we can
Ramadan.
definitely do that, or
Yeah.
if not, I can definitely go over the context and then let him hop on later. But we can definitely then go for some Q&A now.
Perfect. So will we go back to the Q&A? Perfect. So we got one from Henry Casale. He said, which countries are most affected by this type of fraud? Have you any idea how common it is in the UK, for example?
Ehsan, do you want to take this one or should I take it?
You're on mute or something.
We already, I think, mentioned in the countries that the rate is lower, we see less, and in the countries that are, we do not have data for UK. We do not have any operator in UK. We don't work with any operator in UK. But if you look at the price point of UK, it should be it's not very cheap. It's not 1 cent like in some Latin American countries or networks. So it should be in the same area like other networks. 20%, something around that, 20-30% should be there as well.
Okay. Great.
Effectively,
So
it also means, sorry to Ross interrupt you.
no,
Also, question: how big is AIT? How big is trashing? Those are two separate topics, right? So trashing, again, it's up to 40%. Various players validate it's in between 10 to 30%. So an average of 20, right? It can go up to 40%, but 20% is something that people can expect, right? As an average. And also, as I said, the AIT can fall from 20% to 50%. The UK's price point is higher than others. So as Ehsan said, I think 20 is on the low side of the estimate.
Okay.
Yep. Also, Mobile Squad someone from Mobile Squad asked.
Yes, I saw. I think Teodor was answering that.
I typed and so domestic is around 5%. What I mean, there is no accurate figure here, so there is not we cannot be very precise, but it's around 5%. One international is something in the area of 20%, and this is valid for everywhere that the rate is over 2 cents. Okay, definitely it's if it's the rate is higher, it's more attractive. But even if the rate is 3 cents, we still see in some regions that we are active in the protecting mobile network operators. In the area of 20% to 50%. So this is what we so far we found on the ground.
Okay. And then we have one from Ruben Martinez who's asking about the viewer's perspective when it comes to artificial traffic specifically. So if this artificial traffic, is this artificial traffic visible to the end users? If it is, what are they receiving?
Was that question on whether it is visible or invisible?
Whether it is visible, right? What do they see? What does the end user actually get? Yeah,
definitely. The part of it that is not captured, because fraudsters, they cannot capture all this traffic and convert, right? Because they usually do not receive all the traffic. There is also others in the routing, so there is some competition there, so they cannot collect all 100% of this traffic. So that those 20% that I mentioned that could fall to that 20% could fall, important part of that 20% or those volume could fall to MNOs. And if there is no solution like Vox 360 to stop it, then it becomes visible to the subscriber because they receive 20-30 messages sometimes per day from the brands that and OTTs that they never asked for OTP, right? So it's quite easy to realize that it is artificial, right, for the subscribers. And sometimes, like the one that we addressed in the previous call with Beeline Kyrgyzstan, sometimes there are like OTPs generated from Binance fintech type of brands, which the subscriber freaked out that maybe someone tried to hijack its wallet and stealing the cryptocurrency or whatever, and they go to police. So become a huge they create a big mess, and then in those cases, everyone MNOs, everyone realized that there is a big problem. Otherwise, it's just coming like some tickets, and unfortunately, some MNOs even ignore it. You know, so okay.
I think I see Ahmed in the building. Ahmed, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi, hello everyone.
Thank you for joining. I know you're busy. It's the first day of Ramadan. But we're just at your section, so it's perfect timing. So we'll come back to the section, come back to the questions in a bit. Ahmed, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'll take it.
Go ahead.
Sure. I'll quickly close the question we had just to not open the topic again, and then
sure.
I'll go through and discuss with Ahmed on what are the methods of stopping AIT and crashing. Ehsan mentioned what is the visible part, right? But you also have an invisible part. The visible part, as he said, is troubling to customer trust, right? You get it. User gets code that he didn't request. If he can freak out or not, it depends on what kind of code it was, what kind of app was it for. That's the visible part, but it's actually the invisible part that causes and fuels other problems. The invisible part is in the upstream, there has been artificial traffic done at large by someone, but in that moment of time, he couldn't stop, or the fraudster couldn't stop, basically, or the artificial requests intended to reach to be converted. Yeah, but the invisible part is the one that fuels the trashing. So with the invisible part enables SMS trashing in order to keep perceived conversion rates high. Yeah, so the visible leads to an unrequested OTP, but the invisible part of AIT enables trashing, and because of trashing, customers have other problems, such as not receiving their texts. Yeah, so the direct part is the code, but the indirect part is making a request to Google, but actually only message after 6 or 7 requests. So I have to clear that up, and I have the time. I said, we've discussed, Ahmad, at this point, how big of a problem artificial inflation of traffic is, and also SMS trashing. We've discussed on how generally, what is the technology that we utilize to do it. I'll let you take the floor and introduce yourself, and then I'll make a quick context on what the issue is generally, and let you discuss more on your experience.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Ahmed Khalaf from Palestine. I have more than 15 years of experience in wholesale and roaming. I'm currently working with Jawwal as a head of wholesale and roaming function. And a few months ago, we were in a partnership with Vox in A2B services. And just I will try to brief our case study with Vox in some points. Our challenge, we faced a challenge last year regarding the trash and spammed traffic. So at the end of the third quarter of last year, we noticed an increase in customer tickets regarding the non-delivery of A2B OTP verification code traffic, and as well as the delivery of unsolicited A2B traffic. Essentially, in that time, our customers were complaining about failure to receive verification OTP codes, and others claimed that we were receiving OTP codes that we hadn't requested, and some were extremely concerned that some might try to hack their account at some level. So then after that, Vox reached us to implement some solution, Vox 3060, and actually our customer ticket decreased immediately after we implemented the solution, and overall customer experience improved. because we take a great care in providing our subscriber with a positive customer experience. So the solution was useful for us. And honestly, today we hear more and more MNOs struggling with the unsolicited messages that degrade the customer experience. So we recommend having a strong solution, just like what Vox have with us. And because this is actively assisting us with technological solution for the most serious threats on A2B today, I'm saying about bypass, including flash call and unsolicited email filtering. So this is briefly about our business study case with Vox related to the solution.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for sharing that. And we're really happy for what we've achieved there. And Ahmed stressed something that is very important. I leave that thought for any detailed discussion. Fraud is a very dynamic space. And in this case, we're more than happy to help them, and we actively continue helping in order to help Ahmed and his team and the organization at large meet their objectives. As they're Jawwal, they're very focused on customer experience, and that is the reason for such tickets or such problems are just something that is unacceptable. But also their level of I would say attention paid to customers is something that is a best practice and something that is recommended. The reality is that it's very difficult to keep up with fraud without having an adequate technology partner or strategic partner in which such technology is leveraged. Sometimes it's difficult, even for other types of players in the industry, to keep up. But in an MNO, it is difficult, right, to develop such technology in-house and also be updated with all kinds of more fraud mechanisms, whereas a technology partner is someone that has also knowledge of many other markets and can utilize best practices, benchmarks, and data seen in other markets in order to develop comprehensive solutions to solve such issues. So thank you, Ahmed, for sharing the experience. Much appreciated. I'm sure people want to ask questions specifically.
Yes, exactly. So if you have any questions for Ahmed specifically, please ask them. Gentlemen, we have 15 minutes left. Shall we try to make an attempt finishing these questions, or?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
We're ready.
Let's do it. So we have like 15 to go through. So let's try to do like a minute per question rate if you can, but I understand if you want to go on a bit longer. So Andrew Morrow again asks, shouldn't the OTTs make their own systems more sophisticated to allow bots to artificially generate messages from their apps? I think I know the answer to that one, but
they already did some, they already took some action. They did some improvements, but same like what happened with on the MNO side with the gray routes. Fraudsters are dynamic. It's become already $100 million business. They do not give up. So every time OTTs do something, they come up with new methods, new tactics, and the problem come back. So it's in the past we used to have a big fight against fraud on the MNO side. Now this fight or this war moved to OTTs as well. They just I realized that OTTs just started to realize. In the beginning, it was hard for them to admit, but now they started to realize. So yeah, they also try to fight. They do a lot of they try to do a lot of improvement, but so far we see that problem is still there and is growing. So we started to work even with some OTTs to help them, and some success stories will come up soon. We managed to help also OTTs and enterprises to fight with this phenomena in the same way that in the similar way, and leveraging similar technology that we support MNOs to fight with a different type of fraud.
Great. And we actually have one for Ahmed specifically that I'd love to get his take on. what was the fake traffic percentage on Jawwal, and how much of your solution lowered the traffic in general? I assume they mean Vox, because of stopping fake traffic.
I think spam traffic trashing around more than up to 20% maybe, and the solution fixed more than 95% of the traffic. So the complaints is decreased and the spam traffic is decreased around up to 95% of all traffic.
Okay, great.
Yeah, actually, it's a good percentage.
Yeah,
Very good,
thank you, Ahmed. I like to add here, Ross, that human error, according to all the studies, is 3%. So no solution can mitigate better than 97%. So nobody can eliminate it completely.
But I think that the danger, what you kind of allude to, is the danger of this sort of two-pronged fraud is that it kind of looks like they can kind of manipulate it so it looks like human error, you know?
Yeah, could be seen this way as well. But just trying to explain that our solution can manage to mitigate 90, maximum 95%. I mean, in some cases we even have 85%. So we keep improving our solution as well. It's not like we just implement and that's it. It's our team also keep improving our solution, because fraudsters, as I said, are very agile, creative, and things are very dynamic. But we do all our best to mitigate around 90% of all type of fraud.
Right.
Our target is 95, but usually around 90%.
Okay.
We land there.
Okay, and next up we have just anonymous. Can ongoing testing be used to identify suspect traffic, i.e. intentionally testing suspect aggregators with pre-configured test numbers to see if they're actually receiving the message? Iulian, do you want to speak to that one? We haven't heard from you in a while.
Can you repeat that question, because it was not so clear to me?
Sure. Can ongoing testing be used to identify suspect traffic, i.e. intentionally testing suspect aggregators with pre-configured test numbers to see if they're actually receiving the message?
Yes, that's part of the, let's say, solution. So testing, it's always helps to check the situation. On top of that, of course, there's other elements like the machine learning algorithm, the conversion models. So we use a series of technologies and testing in order to identify the current state of the trashing and the artificial traffic inflation.
Okay, great. We got one from Noella Luzolo from Vodacom Congo. Do you have any statistics for this fraud in Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo specifically? I know that's a bit of a curveball, but
I can answer. No.
You can't answer. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do not have. No.
Okay, no problem. Gabor Belkovic asks, "What I would like to understand more about how fraudsters tackle the SMS numbers end customers problem. Are they using fake numbers and hoping they can catch the fraudulent traffic, or are they spamming the real users too?" I think we kind of answered that before, but.
Yeah, I mean, they do not want to spam the users, but this is the consequence somehow. So because they cannot collect all the traffic, capture all the traffic, part of the traffic is delivered to the users, are delivered to the users. So
both active and inactive number regions are used. Yeah.
Inactive ones doesn't harm,
Exactly.
but the active ones, unfortunately, do.
There's also a question here, anonymous attendee, which I've seen. Do you think that the MNO or its exclusive partner are the only ones who benefit from artificial generated traffic? They increase the revenue that way and share the profit. Otherwise, how we can explain that traffic from OTT suddenly increase once there is an exclusive partnership with MNO. So first of all, the answer to this is that not the MNO is the benefit of this artificial traffic. And I will explain, or the exclusive partner. The problems that the MNO is facing with this artificial in combination with the trashing, it's an increased ticket. So basically a poor customer experience with the mobile subscribers, which they will complain, not receiving the OTPs, the codes or the intended traffic, the real traffic, in receiving extra traffic that definitely alarms them, as Ahmad mentioned, they're users that they're thinking someone is trying to compromise their accounts or steal their money, which they all fall back to the MNO, right? So you have a lot of problems which they fall back to the MNO or their exclusive partner. In the same time, this traffic, it's actually short-stopped by the ones that they've generated. So the ones that they're doing this, they don't need to be exclusive. Actually, the ones that are exclusive and the MNO, they have the highest amount of problems in the ecosystem. So this is the case. The artificial traffic, it's not generated by MNOs or the exclusive, it's generated by fraudsters that they intend to make the money. In the same time, the OTTs, they have huge amount of increase of cost. You can have a user trying to get like
I want to, sorry, Iulian, I want to answer the anonymous attendee.
Yeah.
There are some, we had this question in other webinars as well.
Yeah.
If the exclusive partner is the one that generating the fraudulent traffic, they can capture all because they are exclusive, right? So subscribers will not receive any, none of the messages delivered to the subscribers, right? Once you are the one that aggregating or you're in the collaboration with aggregating, you can capture just all and not letting anything to go to the subscribers. And then everyone will be happy, nobody see a problem. So no, unfortunately, the problem is not that simple. If the exclusive ones the one that was behind this phenomena, that then yeah, things maybe was much simpler, but it is not. So unfortunately, there are many other players, and that's why exclusive partners or anti-fraud companies that helping MNOs, they have a lot of issues and complaints coming from the MNOs subscribers, which they need to tackle to find a solution to block that traffic, find that, and so on. So, but I'm not saying no, nobody do that. No exclusive, all the exclusive companies are, I don't know, none of them is in this unethical game or phenomena. But they are less motivated than anybody else. It's opposite, because first of all, they always can increase the rate. Most of the time they can increase the rate and generate extra revenue. Why they should get dirty to this type of games? Second of all, usually all these exclusive partners are quite big companies, established company. None of them, they risk their reputation. You know, but fraudsters are everywhere, right? Small aggregators here and there. But yeah, maybe there are also exclusive ones in the game. But what we see now, it's not the biggest problem. Is not with the exclusive partners, and it's with the rest of the aggregators, which cannot capture all the traffic, and part of the traffic they are delivered to the mobile network operator subscribers, and create all this damage around.
Okay, great. So we're coming up to the end. We only have 4 minutes left, so we'll do some more questions really quick. So Sandy Malajic asks, when Vox receives a client dispute due to generated traffic, how do you tackle that dispute?
We do not receive any, I mean, we receive tickets. We usually receive tickets that from mobile network operators and we start to work with other with our channel partners or with our OTT partners to find out who is or who is behind, and trying to remove them from the chain. It's not easy because once you remove some aggregators, some others starting somehow to. But what we continue fight on that. At the same time, we try to at least to mitigate as much as we can and not stop that type of traffic and messages and not letting them get delivered to the subscribers. This way, at least we reduce the level of damage. But always, as said, I mean, like 5% falling. So some 5% is we cannot. I mean, just getting delivered, and that's something that we cannot do much about. We work with all the players in the chain, trying to, or with the OTTs, trying to eliminate also that 5%, which our technology and no technology, in my view, can mitigate.
Okay, great. Well, we're literally coming to the end. I just want to quickly, before we finish up, I want to thank Vox again for sponsoring this webinar. It was another great session. I would love to do a follow-up in a few months to see how things are going. Maybe we could get one going in real life, because there's so many questions. I think that would be more fun than doing a webinar. I think the very important thing you touched on is awareness through education. So through webinars such as this and through what MEF does, I think the first step is becoming aware of the problem. Gentlemen, does anyone want to leave us with closing remarks? Ehsan, Teodor, Iulian, or Ahmed?
I can go for it. So first of all, thank you, Ahmed, for joining and for helping us raise awareness on the matter. I do thank everyone for joining and for taking the time so we can all educate ourselves on why this problem is significant and what we can all do together in order to solve it. I would say that I know this hour is short, but in case there's anyone from MNOs or anyone from OTTs that want us to have a more detailed discussion, workshop, or session, they can always reach out to us, right? And we can discuss what can be done, what is the problem more in detail, and also how that applies to the situation of that given operator or that given OTT.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that's it from us, guys. Thank you for joining our webinar. We'll see you guys for the next one. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
You guys, thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you all. Thank you.